Welcome to the Heartbeat for Hire podcast. I'm your host, Lyndsay Dowd. My goal is to help train leaders and sales organizations how to manage and deliver results with empathy, compassion, and kindness. Let's get started. Greetings and welcome to this episode of Heartbeat for Hire. You know I bring you good guests. Today is no exception. Why is it easier to sell our products or services than it is to sell ourselves into a new sales role or even get a promotion? After going through 5 layoffs in medical sales and reviewing more than 16,000 resumes as a recruiter, Claire Davis built an award-winning company to help people get the jobs they want in healthcare by leaning into what they're great at, selling. Her company, Traction Resume, helps people land meaningful 6-figure roles and launch their healthcare consulting opportunities by becoming a category of one, not a commodity. Claire has been featured in Forbes, Wall Street Journal, and has been named a 2 times top voice in job search. And at home, she and her husband live in the Pacific Northwest with their 2 boys. Claire, I'm so happy you're here. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Lyndsay. You are making my week. This is the best way to start off a Monday. Thank you so much for having me.
The pleasure is mine. So I'm your friend and I know lots about you, but for the folks that don't, could you share a little bit about your background?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I'm Claire Davis, if we haven't yet met, and I run Traction Resume. And the reason I do is, as Lyndsay shared, I've been through 5 different layoffs in my career. And we're talking all over the map: mergers and acquisitions, companies closing, going through the 2008 home crisis and having only home appliance clients, entire staff cut. So I've been through all the different situations that can take your career from stable to not so stable, a little bit rocky. And so the great thing about that is now I've learned to leverage that and create the system that I use so that other people can learn how to get out of those tough spots as well. So now we do medical sales professional branding, we write resumes, and we also help coach people to get from layoff to landed again. So I'm so thrilled to be here today because unfortunately, layoffs are still with us, though I'd argue that it's actually a good thing because now we all are looking at our careers a little bit differently. And what's really interesting to me, Lyndsay, is that the people I speak with, when they've been laid off, a few weeks into it, they say, I'm actually glad it happened. In a weird way, because I've been meaning to leave for a long time, or I really wanted to shake up my career, or I had these other passions as well. So I'm thrilled to be here and to share a little bit about layoffs and how we can make them work for us.
You and I always talk about that, meaning the part where we say it's a gift. I mean, I got fired, you've been laid off, and we use that as part of our power and part of our story. And, these stories of resilience, it's why this podcast exists. But what are some of the things that people that have recently been laid off need to be thinking about?
Absolutely. So I would say, number 1, the thing that most of my executives come to me and say, Claire, I am now without a role and I am freaking out. I haven't had to interview for 20 years. I say, if you are still employed today, or if you are recently laid off, turn off your computer after this podcast, of course, take a minute and write down your wins. A lot of times when we're in our career and we're doing really well and we're making great strides and our teams are thriving and performing, we forget to actually write down the metrics that matter, that showcase our impact. Yeah. So I would say, make yourself a schedule and start to write down periodically, maybe once a quarter, maybe every month, just exactly what the metrics are that you are tied to, because those will support you whether you are employed and looking for a promotion, whether you're trying to work with a resume writer to keep your resume fresh, or if you're getting laid off and you happen to, they have that scenario that happens all the time where they turn the computers off and you barely even know what to do before it's done. So definitely get your metrics in order. That is mission critical, number 1.
I actually love that. And that's something that I coach. I call it building your brag book. And yes. I actually have people go back through their resume and write down all the amazing things that they've done. And number 1, it makes you feel better because you go, gosh, I'm actually pretty good. I've done all these great things. And that gives you some, wind in your sails. But the other reason is to have that fresh and handy. And it's a live document. This lives with you throughout your career. the more you update it, the more ready you're going to be to have those conversations. And when someone asks you, have you ever done this before? Yeah, actually I have. In fact, I actually have some wins around that.
Yes.
So I love doing that.
Oh,
So
exactly.
you give out so much free advice on LinkedIn, and I wanted to ask, what do you think the correlation between their resume and their LinkedIn profile should be? Should it match up, or how do you handle this, or how do you teach this?
Okay, Lyndsay, you asked the best questions. Yes, this is critical. And honestly, if you had asked me this 15 years ago when I was in recruiting and said, Claire, should people worry about their LinkedIn profile? I would say no. And companies aren't supposed to look or really pay any attention to your social media. And if they do, it's against the rules and so on and so forth. But today, it's a given.
Mm-hmm.
People are looking you up before they extend an offer,
Yeah.
before they interview you. And believe me, your clients are finding you online before they do business with you. It's just the world that we live in. So the resume is so important, but the LinkedIn profile is now of equal importance because it's your living, breathing 24/7 salesperson for you on the internet all the time.
Well, and if y'all aren't following Claire, you are missing all of her brilliant tips. And I know she's focused on, medical sales and healthcare. However, her tips apply to everyone. So first of all, go follow Claire. But for people that are a little afraid of creating content, or like, I'm not going to be a content creator. I hear this a lot. What's your advice for them? How should they start?
It's a really natural thing, I think, to be nervous about being vulnerable online. There's a lot of factors at play. So we could update our profile and the notifications might show our friends and family and colleagues that we're getting active on LinkedIn, and maybe they start asking questions. It can also just be that nervous thing of being showcased online at all. Also, like, what do we say? A lot of people think like, well, I'd love to be more visible online and really engage in my industry, but I don't even know where to start when it comes to posting at all. So the good news is I have some quick fixes for all of those. So first, if you are concerned that you are going to update your LinkedIn profile and then suddenly your boss is going to see and he's going to call you and you're going to be immediately put on a performance plan and kicked out of the company. First, I want to level your fears a little bit because you can turn your notifications off. So that's number one. And number two, it could turn out actually like a few of my clients and one named Kelly in particular, we'll use Kelly because that's her real name. And Kelly was nervous about that too. And in fact, we turned off her notifications when she was starting to make updates to her profile and then turned them back on when we were done. And she said, you know what, Claire, I love women's health. So I want to start posting. And her boss did see her start posting and he did call her and he said, I've noticed you've been a little more active on LinkedIn lately. Is everything okay? Like, are things going well? Are you happy here?
Good boss.
And it actually, right? Great boss, probably studied under Lyndsay Dowd, just saying. And and it broke open the conversation because the truth is, there were things she wanted to do that she hadn't had access to yet. So actually, she was able to negotiate for a promotion and added something more to her role that wasn't there already because she was able to have that conversation. And without being vulnerable and taking that shot on LinkedIn, she may not have had that conversation or even had the courage to, reach out. Yeah, so it worked out.
I love that. And another tip I like to give, LinkedIn is no longer just your online resume. It's a platform for expertise. And for anybody just starting out, if somebody asks you, say, listen, if I want to have a name in this space, I've got to start engaging. And that's what you're seeing right now. So that's a really reasonable answer to, even if you are looking and you are trying to find another role, or in this case, a promotion. I think it's a reasonable response, but just engaging with people, commenting on other people's stuff or articles you like, or sharing things. Those are all really great ways, I think, to dip your toes in the water.
Oh yeah. I mean, it completely lowers the bar, right? It doesn't have to be, okay, I'm going to go and create a complicated video and carousel or anything like that.
Yeah.
In fact, the way that I coach my clients to start dipping their toe in the water on LinkedIn is by commenting.
Yeah.
And if commenting seems like too much, you're really not sure what to say yet, you can always like things that interest you, and keep in mind, like things that have to do with your industry. So as much as I love to see a wonderful cat meme or like a spoof on resume writers, also, I have to remember that if I want things to show up in my feed that matter to my clients and my business, I have to engage there. And when I do, and when you do, I mean, you'll find that the things that interest you and your clients and yourself will start to populate in your feed. And it'll be a little less random than it might have been before.
Yeah, I love that. As soon as you start getting intentional, your feed kind of starts to clean itself up.
Exactly.
So it's great. And you can always mute people, and you can follow people. You can ring the bell. I rang Claire's bell years ago. And oh, by the way, hot tip, if you ring somebody's bell on LinkedIn, if you don't know what I'm talking about, reach out to either of us. We'll tell you. But if you ring somebody's bell, they don't know. So ring away. You can populate your whole feed with people that you think are brilliant.
Absolutely.
So what are some of the questions that you guide your clients on asking on interviews?
Oh gosh, such a great question. So I think a lot of times we prepare our interview like we prepare our resume, which is all about us. And here's the thing, and the reason I love working with medical sales professionals is because they are uniquely an incredible combination of sales, heart, science, and strategy. And what I find most often is that even though we can be exceptional in the field or in front of that physician or in front of our team to motivate them again, when it comes to marketing ourselves, which is exactly what we're doing when we're looking for a new job, whether you're laid off or not, when it comes to marketing and selling ourselves, we completely forget that we are in sales. And we only tend to use these skills to sell our product. So here's what I would pose to everybody today. Whether you are focusing on your interview or on your resume, think of yourself now as the product. Okay, so let's imagine the interview situation. We're going to go after a specific role. We know the company. Maybe if we're lucky, we know a little bit about the hiring manager. So what would we do if we were the product and we wanted to sell ourselves or our product into a new account? Well, I mean, I don't know about you, Lyndsay, but the first thing I do is double down on the research. So I want to know everything I can find out about this company, if they've been featured in the news, if press releases have come out, if the leadership has anything that's on YouTube talking about their vision for the company. I want to know about the role. And I'm probably going to do some deep diving by interviewing and maybe talking to, through LinkedIn, some of the employees who work there, but even more importantly, the employees who have left there. Because often those people are more willing to chat with us and give us a realistic view of maybe things that they left for. And often they know about opportunities within the organization we wouldn't otherwise know about. So if we think about it this way, now the interview conversation becomes the next step of the funnel, because we've done the prep. We've got a good understanding of maybe what the challenges are. And now we're going to go into that interview conversation like a discovery call, and we're going to dig for more pain points. So if we retool the interview conversation by using and leveraging what we know about sales already and marketing already, it's going to be a much more productive conversation. And you're going to become that category of one that Lyndsay mentioned earlier, instead of just another candidate talking about their job and their career history.
Well, I think that's so important, Claire. And I think, I've made the mistake of when they say, do you have any questions? I'm like, no, I'm good. Like, don't waste it. Come in with some really good questions. I always like to coach people to say, ask if you can speak to a couple of people on the team. And I do that for a very specific reason. I want to see the reaction of the person I'm talking to. If they say no, red flag. And if they say yes, great, because I want to know how things are when they're tough, and how are you coached and how are you handled? And, that I think those are really important things to know.
Yeah. And, I mean, honestly, I'm sure we've both now been in this situation. I know you have for sure. And for many of you listening, you've been in the hiring seat. Yeah. And I think in any conversation we've got to remember that it's still people hiring people. Yeah. And so any kind of conversation that we have, we want to go in with how am I going to connect with this person on a personal level? And I always tell my clients, the sooner you can turn it into a conversation, the sooner you win. Because a lot of times we think, okay, the interview feels more like this firing squad situation. You're standing up there against the wall and they're peppering questions at you and you just do your best. But really, when it can be turned into a conversation where both people become curious about solving the business challenge that they are by hiring you, now you're both on the same side of the table trying to solve the same problem together. So some questions that can sort of help unlock this would be, tell me a little bit about what your last quarter has been like compared to the one prior. Some things I've researched online are these, and these. I'd love to hear your perspective since you're right here in the middle of it. So it's a next level question than I think we're sort of taught to prepare, which are things like, answers to tell me about yourself and what's your biggest weakness and walk me through your resume. All of those are great. But if we start to think about how do we discover, like we would with a client, what they're really dealing with, it's going to serve us in a lot of ways. Number one, you're going to start to understand what this hiring manager is really worried about and why they need to hire you at all. Because people only hire if they need to solve a problem and they don't already know someone who can solve the problem, or they can't solve it themselves. If they could, there would be no reason to use, hiring at all. So if we can focus a little bit more on the other in the conversation, they will literally tell you what they need you to do and what they need to hear from you.
Well,
so have you experienced that?
Oh yeah. What you just described was a great negotiation. And in a great negotiation, both sides feel like they win. And whenever you have an opportunity to build somebody else up and, say, from everything I've read, you're a terrific manager and, well, that's nice. You're complimenting me, but it's about you. You're just changing the conversation. You're really making it a little more about them. And people like to talk about themselves. They like to hear nice things about themselves. So it's a great way to make both sides feel good.
So I think so too. And it feels so much more comfortable. Like it does become that conversation. The other piece too, that can be really helpful is, tell me about why you brought me in today. I know you have 30 other candidates to look at, but what about me made you say, hey, I want to sit here at this Starbucks? Because we know many, many interviews happen at Starbucks,
right?
Unless it's Zoom. And, what was it that, interested you enough to speak with me today? And let them bring that forward in a way that makes it more personal than having to feel like you're cold calling during this, what should be very warm, productive conversation.
I love that. All right. So could you talk a little bit about your process and what you do with your clients that makes it more advantageous to work with somebody like you versus going it alone? I mean, things have changed. So talk a little bit about that.
So first of all, professional branding has never been more important than it is today for individuals. Before, branding was really relegated only to companies, and brand champions were nothing to do with a career. Like it wasn't done. So what I would say first is that, we have really found that, I have found that after those layoffs, I ended up realizing that my customers were still calling me, even knowing that I wasn't with that company any longer, which told me that there was something about me that they liked doing business with. And in fact, I don't know if I've shared this story with you before, Lyndsay, but after my third layoff, I was feeling pretty low. And for those who may not know my story, the short end is that I was raised in a recruiting family. So when the other families at PF Chang's were talking about, summer camp and like what they were doing on the weekend, my family and I are like huddled down at our table over our wontons, like asking each other, did Sue remember her brag book? And did Tom remember to close them? And how many people do we have to fill in Atlanta? So if you grew up in a recruiting family, like we need a support group all of our own. So please hit me up. But it was a real shock being laid off that many times because I thought I had careers in the bag. So after the third, I felt really low. Like, of all people, I should be able to hold a job, right? And I had a client who called me from 3 positions before. And he said, Claire, I'm so glad you answered. We have to get this test ordered for a patient, and we're out of kits. Because at the time I sold kits to collect samples, tumor samples for diagnostic testing. And I said, sure, absolutely. Like, I will connect you with the person you need to see, and I'll send you the number for the lab. I've got a couple of, friends who can still run a kit over there. No problem. And I said, but you know what? Before you go, can I ask why you're calling me? Like, I don't work for them anymore. And he goes, I know, but I just knew that you would help. And I've always known that you'll help us no matter where you are. And it was such an honor first.
Absolutely.
And at the same time, I realized, oh my goodness, there is something more than just my resume here that people love doing business with me for. So what is that? And so that's that. And looking at 16,000 medical sales resumes is how we created what we use now for all of our clients, which is our triple S system.
Perfect segue. Talk about that. Keep going.
So that's now how we position everybody, because where most candidates will go into the hiring situation and, be comfortable with the old traditional way they do it, or they, God forbid, start applying online. We forget to leverage those sales skills to promote ourselves. So now the triple S system sort of emerged organically on its own. I tried it, got me back into 2 jobs faster and faster for more money each time. And then I thought, on the 5th layoff, you know what? I'm going to share this with my colleagues, because we're all sitting here on the same conference call, and I want them to know how to use this kind of a system too. And sure enough, I got one by using this system. One guy started as the cancer center director for a hospital way closer to his house. Another got an immediate offer from a competing company. And the third was able to get another great offer and open her own side hustle. So here's how the triple S system works. And I highly, highly recommend that if you're listening, everybody put this into practice right now. So it's your story, your style, and your statistics. And once you get that trifecta together, you go from a candidate in a pile of candidates to a category of one. It's worked absolute wonders for me and my clients.
Oh, I love it. That is so powerful. And it's so in line with what we teach about, creating your power statement, using these moments of resilience to help define what makes you unusual, what makes you be able to demonstrate growth. I love this. Fabulous, fabulous job for you recognizing it. And folks are so lucky to be able to use your smarts to help them build this for themselves. It's really, really smart.
It's been, thank you so much. It's been really wonderful to see. And I'm sure too, once you go through those challenges and then others are able to benefit through that, it's incredibly fulfilling. And, I'll say, if I had to boil it down, if we were just to even just now talk about story, I was listening to your podcast, the last one with Andrea, the publisher.
Yeah.
And something she said stuck with me, because it's the exact feeling that I get about telling my clients stories. Because when you tell your story well, that's when people pay attention. But the thing is we typically tell our story incorrectly. Typically, we tell our story all about ourselves, and it doesn't have to do with our target. So she said, your journey is only important in as much as it matters to your audience. Talk about a wallop of a statement. I thought that is exactly right. And so here's the thing with your story, right, Lyndsay? And I know you know this. It's really 2 parts. We've got to talk about what makes us unique as professionals and the results that we get, like the how that we do it, that makes such an impact, that makes people fall in love and want to do business with us over anybody else. And the other half of that, the very important second part, is exactly what Andrea mentioned. Why is it relevant? And this is what most people miss, but the opportunity is for everybody here listening today, now you know the one piece that might be sticking and not working for you, holding you back when it comes to your resume or your interview, is that relevance. So just like we talked about earlier, with all that research, with the age of the internet and ChatGPT, you can do a ton of incredible deep dive before you even tell your story, and you can find out what people need to hear. And when you combine your unique value with why it matters to your target, it is absolutely unstoppable.
Love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so shifting gears a little bit, what inspires you?
You.
You can't use that. Keep going.
Okay, we'll take that out in the post. No. Honestly, what inspires me is that now I've interviewed thousands of people, and not one do business the same way.
Mm.
And I'm talking, I only now work with medical sales professionals and healthcare professionals. We do often brand physicians as well. Mm-hmm. But what's amazing to me is that even in that tight knit, everyone knows everybody industry, every single leader I've spoken with inspires their teams differently, connects with their leaders differently, approaches challenges differently. And that is incredible because it shows me that everybody has a story that's unique and worth telling. And a lot of times I think we feel that there are certain things we need to say, or if we share our story, it's already been done, or the way we look about business isn't unique, but it really is. And I can tell you that for a fact, because like you have, I'm sure, after you hear so many people's stories, none are the same. Nobody looks through the same lens, and it's incredible.
So true. Love that.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, the stories are what make you be remembered. So it's so important to have a rock solid story, and they're all different. And this is what makes people really interesting.
Yeah, agreed. And I think as far as the interesting pieces go, I find the challenges to be the most interesting. Yeah. Because that's where people change. Do you know what I mean? Like we always say, people can change, but people generally, I think
it's where the growth comes from.
Exactly. I want to know how you figured that thing out.
Yeah. I love that. That's always a piece of the power statement that I try and coach people on. Like, talk about the worst thing that's happened to you and how you came out of it, because that growth is what people are attracted to. And look at all the movies that have been made about stories of resilience. Look at this podcast. It's the same. And you have a podcast. So talk a little bit about that.
Oh, I do. Yeah. So we launched our podcast last year. It's called Today's Medical Sales Leader, and it's meant for anybody who's touching the healthcare industry that really wants to have a greater impact by learning things that you're not necessarily going to get at the corporate sales training. So we talk a lot about public speaking. I've got people there who are talking about style on Zoom and in the office. I have people like you who go on and talk and drop serious gems about leadership and how to really motivate disenchanted teams. So it's been great. We've been blessed with a lot of really incredible guests. Recently, we interviewed Bob Berg, who wrote The Go-Giver, who's just an incredible man. What an incredible movement. And our episode where we talked a lot about leadership and overcoming those challenges was also one of my favorites, because many times I think we forget that the things that we learn from that challenge are ideas worth spreading. Not to quote TED Talks or anything, but that's really what I wanted to share.
That's so true. And what would you like your legacy to be?
Say someone's in their car right now listening to this, and they're driving down I-80, and they've had an incredible career, maybe 15, 20 years, gotten those promotions. It's been real cookie cutter and solid. And today they got that call that the team is being cut in half and they're asked to leave. I want to inspire people to take what they have learned and remember in that moment that they are incredibly valuable apart from the layoff situation. because it's not the easy moments that define us, it's the hard ones. And when you can remember that you are worth so much more, you are so much more than what's just on your name tag, I think that's when we're able to really lead ourselves to that next step and overcome a layoff. And it can really be a launch pad. We talk a lot about how do you make your layoff a launch pad with my clients. And the thing is, like I shared, early in this show today, many will say once laid off, gosh, I've been meaning to get out of there for a while. It's a gift. The leaders. Yeah.
It's a gift.
So just, my legacy, say I'm gone tomorrow. I would just say, I hope that I can help to encourage people going through layoffs that, there's brighter career on the other side. And maybe, just maybe, the way you come through your layoff is going to be an incredibly defining moment for you.
Oh, so good. So good. Claire, how do people find you?
So I would love to, if anybody wants to come and meet me over on LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn far more often than I should be. So you can find me at Claire M. Davis and then also at tractionresume.com. And if you are in the medical sales field and you want to learn a little bit more than you're going to get at that quarterly sales training, please come check out and listen to today's medical sales leader. And I would love to hear more about what you want to hear about on the podcast too.
Oh, and it's a great show, you guys. Don't miss it. Definitely follow along. You will love it. She has brilliant guests. And you do a lot of LinkedIn lives too. So there's always like a lot of content for people to listen in there as well. So you have been a fabulous guest, my friend. Thank you for being on. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Heartbeat for Hire. Claire, you're the best.
You are the best. Thank you so much, Lyndsay. It's such an honor to be on your show. I can't lie. I was a little bit nervous, but it's always so so fun to talk with you.
Thanks.
Thank you for having me.
Take care. Thanks for listening to Heartbeat for Hire. If you like what you hear, I'd love it if you'd subscribe and leave a 5-star review. To keep the conversation going, you can find me on Insta or at LinkedIn at Lyndsay Dowd, H4H, or you can reach me at my website, heartbeatforhire.com. Thanks so much. Have a great day.